Welcome to episode 12 of the podcast. Hope you guys had a good week all around, especially on the trading front. Last week was littered with some golden opportunities if you like racing, cricket or golf. So I really got stuck into those. Couldn't really enjoy the sunshine, unfortunately, since my hay fever went into fifth gear last week. In fact, it's the worst it's been since I can remember. It really was that bad. None of my nasal spray or eye drops seemed to be sufficient enough to counter it. I had to get some doctor prescribed drugs, and even that wasn't strong enough. So I've decided that from next year, from April to June, I am out of it. I have had enough of 25 years of suffering. You know, I'm not coming back to the UK for the first 3 months of hay fever season. You know, it's just too much of a nuisance. Sneezing and crying, not being able to get anything done. It's going to cost a bit, lodge up somewhere abroad for a few months. But if it means being able to work and focus properly, then it's well worth the investment as far as I'm concerned. I mean, for the last week, I literally have, I've barely left the house. I've had to shut all the windows. It's been like a sauna in my office and living room. And, I'm wearing a mask with Vaseline over my face and I'm still sneezing and crying. It's just been awful. And I'm pretty certain there's many out there who can resonate with what I'm going through. But other than that, on the trading front, it was an odd week for me. As I said earlier, it was littered with really good opportunities in the racing, cricket and golf markets. And I expected to have a big one this week. There were on the three sports, they all had major events. So with racing, we had Royal Ascot, which is the highlight of the flat season. We had the Test cricket, which is, which you guys know is my bread and butter in that sport. And we had the third major of the year in the golf, the US Open. So, yeah, I expected a good week. And I guess that's kind of what this podcast is about. That's really what I want to talk about today. Expectations and how it can really affect your trading and your performance in any endeavor for that matter. And this week's results really drove that point home for me. You see, when it comes to the big festivals in the racing, the likes of Cheltenham Gold Cup, the Grand National or Royal Ascot, I always have like three figures in mind as to how much I can expect to make. So I have my first figure, which is, about the average of what I really should be making, given my bankroll, my trading style and experience based on, my previous performances historically from trading each festival. So that first figure is pretty much what I, kind of expect to make during these big meetings. Then the second one, I have my low end estimate if things really don't go my way. So I have a ballpark figure as to what I can expect to make on the low end if it's a tough festival, if I underperform. And then finally, I have my final figure, which is my estimation as to what I can possibly make if it's a really good festival. So those years I've had where everything goes my way and the markets are super easy to trade, I have a ballpark figure as to what I can expect to make. It doesn't mean I'll be overstaking, but, again, I'll be making, that sort of projection. All these projections are, as a matter of fact, are based on previous festivals. So my high-end estimate is based on what I've achieved before. So, yeah, I've got a pretty good idea as to what I can achieve if things go my way. Now, making all these projections is all well and good, providing they don't start interfering with how you approach the markets, because, things get problematic when you start to build expectations off of those figures, that's where it can really wreak havoc with your trading. All those projections, they should only serve as an estimate for what you could potentially make, nothing less and nothing more. So on the first day of the festival, I was actually preoccupied with trading the cricket, so I couldn't give my full attention to the racing. It was the final day of the England-New Zealand test match, and England were chasing, I think, 299 runs, thereabouts, in the final innings, and they had about 72 overs left. So it was just a cracker of a final day. It was just a beautiful market for trading. It just really came out of nowhere. They were 3 wickets down, I think. I'm just recalling it right now off the top of my head. And it was tea time. and right after tee is the final session. So, it didn't look likely that they were going to chase. It looked like they were just going to bat out and settle for the draw. And it was Johnny Bairstow and Ben Stokes at the crease, and they ran absolutely riot in the final session. They were batting like it was a 2020 game. It was just incredible. And Johnny Bairstow ended up getting the second fastest century in England Test cricket history. He missed out on the record by 1 ball. And, that record has stood for the last 120 years. So he went on to score 136 off 92 balls, and Stoke ended up seeing the innings out, 75 and not out. And, like I said, as soon as Bairstow came to the crease, the odds on England were around 10 to 1, around about that price. And, in my mind, it seemed pretty short. I wasn't tempted to lay it since it was such a roller coaster game. There was so much whip swing back and forth. All three results were in play coming into the final session, especially the draw. So I was really just playing off the draw and the England price against each other. So England were 10 to 1. Wasn't tempted to lay because I know Bairstow and Stokes are capable of getting runs, but I didn't think they were going to chase it down. But yeah, literally after tee, Bairstow and Stokes, they just started swinging for the fences, and the price just tumbled in. It was just boundary after boundary, and I got in on the action at around 6 or 7 to 1, and I'd already made a fairly decent chunk after the first couple of days. I didn't really trade the third and fourth day because I was out playing golf. But yeah, just in that final session alone on the last day, I ended up, double, even tripling my position. I think I made 2.5 times the amount which I, had before the start. So, and it all happened in the space of an hour and a half. They just ran absolutely riot. So just off those final overs, managed to nick probably about $1,000 in profit. So yeah, it was just an incredible session to trade. And when I have days like that, I'm not really tempted to take on any additional risk. So when it came to Ascot, I bet quite conservatively, quite defensively. Mentally, I thought to myself, if I make anything, it will be considered a bonus, since the trade that I made on the cricket really came out of nowhere. So there was really no pressure on myself at all. And I ended up trading Ascot really well that day. I think I made around 300 quid, which is about what I would have expected to have made had I given it my full attention. So I was really satisfied with that. I ended up, starting to the week hot. I was already, 1,400 quid, whatever it was, up on that day alone. Now, when it came to day 2 of the festival, coming into it, I thought, okay, if I can meet my projections as easily as I did yesterday when giving it only half my attention. Yesterday I made 300 quid. I was just in cruise control, and I wasn't even watching all the races properly. I was just nipping in and out, just taking minimal risk trades, and I made 300. So if I can do that only giving it half my attention, how easy is it going to be to blow past £300 today if I go all in and just focus on Royal Ascot? Now, bear in mind, I'm saying £300 a day because barring last year, where again, I was too preoccupied with the cricket, apart from that year, I've averaged around 1,500 quid for the festival for the last few years with a similar bankroll and similar staking. So that's round about what I was expecting to make. So yeah, anyway, I thought, if I can handle day 1 that comfortably while I'm trading the cricket with only half my attention, I should comfortably make around, 500 quid or so today. So the first race comes along, and I think I spot the price on either the second or third favorite horse. I can't remember exactly, but it was steaming in. And I jump in for one stake, and I end up a couple ticks in profit. My bet gets matched, and the price, jumps, falls a couple of ticks. So I'm in profit at this point, and everything's gone my way so far. And I pile in for another stake and a half. So I've now got 2.5 stakes in the market, despite the fact that the money on the backside was getting quite thin. So if there was even a slight pullback in price, I'd be in the red. But I did it anyway. And the price did come in. It actually did come in, and it touched my exit. The only problem was the market had fizzled out by the time it reached my exit, and the market wasn't willing to go any lower. Nobody was willing to back odds on the said horse at any shorter price. So because I had a fairly hefty position on the backside, the only way I could exit my trade was to chase the price back up and get matched. So that's not a situation you want to find yourself in, especially when you're overexposed. I got real value for the first stake. The second one really lowered my price average entry point, especially because it was a stake and a half. It was bigger than my first position. So if I wanted to exit my position, I'd end up losing money. I'd have to chase the price back in the other direction. So it was a really bad situation I got myself into. And this was around, I think, half an hour before the off. So, with festivals, you can really get stuck into the pre-race markets a good hour or two before the off because the markets are just so liquid. So I was around, by the time the price hit my exit, I was around, I think, 150 quid up. And yeah, when the price hit my exit. So on paper, it was a good trade. £150 is well above my average. So the way I break it down, the way I break down my projections for the festival is by average. So there's 35 races across the festival, across 5 days, 7 races a day. And if I'm projecting to make around £1,500 in profit, that's around £40 a race. So £150 up I was for this trade. It was a really good trade. Needless to say, by the way, that's not my target per race, because trading doesn't work like that. You trade when the opportunity arises. Opportunities aren't dispersed equally across races, since all races are different. Factors such as length and whether or not it's a grade 1 or a handicap or a novice or so on is going to influence the price action differently from race to race. But without going off tangent, it was a good trade on paper, but I couldn't get matched and couldn't exit my trade. So I ended up having to chase the price up. And this is where things got hairy. So the first stake I fired in, only around 20% of it got matched. And, I ended up either spooking the market or spooking a bot, because I tried to fire in another stake, one tick higher. And like I said, it was quite a big position. And the price just surged around 8 ticks upward, not only wiping out my profit, but putting me deep into the red. And I had to close the trade for nearly £300 loss. I think I was £290 down. So I went from £150 up to £290 down. So it was an absolute horror show to start the day. And it really set the tone for the rest of the day. So the next trade I found a great couple horses to scalp. I think I made around 172 quid. Next race, it was just a small £20 loss. But, mentally, it was still burning me, that first loss. The worst time you can ever make a big loss during a trading session is at the start. Because no matter how hard you work for the rest of the day, it's only going to get yourself back to even. So it just feels like a colossal waste of time. And it only makes you want to, scratch that itch to overstake or overtrade even more, which is exactly what I did in the fourth race, where I got knocked for 6 again and lost another £300. So now I'm over £400 in the red. I've got 3 races left, and the only chance I've got of getting back to evens is if I substantially increase my staking and risk, which I was absolutely not going to do, especially when you factor in that I wasn't there mentally. So I had to sack off the rest of the day. I traded one more Ascot race and another race at Hamilton. And I made back another 60 quid or so on those 2 races. But I skipped the last 2 races at Ascot as my confidence was just shot to pieces. And if I did take on any more risk and increase my staking, it's only going to end one way. With the level that I'm at now, losing £400 is bad, but it's bearable. One good session at Ascot and I can make it back. My only problem was that my confidence was shot. Not only did I lose the first race of the day, but I lost a deep 3-figure amount, and then did it again at the tail end of my trading session a couple of hours later. But one thing that I do give myself credit for last week is that I didn't go chasing back that loss in the later days. That second loss had effectively already written off the festival as far as I was concerned. There wasn't really any chance of hitting £1,500 given my style of trading and level of staking. So in other words, I dropped my expectations and I ended up trading pretty well for the remainder of the tournament. Now, that doesn't mean to say I made above average returns, because the fact of the matter was, this was actually a very tricky Ascot to trade. There was a lot of price manipulation, a lot of volatility, a lot of unpredictable movements. It was very difficult to read the markets. And truth be told, even if I didn't make those two costly errors on day two, I still wouldn't have hit my £1,500 projection. So this was always going to be, a below average festival. And knowing that really put me at peace. And I was able to go about trading the remainder of the tournament with a clear head and no expectations. So day 3 and day 4 are typically the quietest of the festival, and it really showed in my results. On day 3, I made around 40 quid. It was just too difficult to make anything decent. And on day 4, I made 155 quid. Like I said, not remotely impressive for a festival, but, it was very hard this year. When you consider the fact that I was still licking my wounds from day 2, it could very easily have been more losing days had I let it. So just staying green on day 3 or day 4 was all I was hoping for, and just waiting for Saturday to take advantage of the additional liquidity. So, yeah, I was awake till late on Friday evening. I think I was out. And, I like to wake up early to trade the Australian racing, as a lot of you know, on Saturday mornings. But that wasn't possible this time around. And I didn't want to burn myself out. So I only managed to catch the tail end of the morning racing, and I made a few good trades. So, I was around 30 quid up, but it put me in good stead for the afternoon session. It's just a small mental victory. It gives you that little cushion knowing that you're already up for the day. Anyway, so afternoon comes, and given it's a Saturday, again, I'm really expecting liquidity to be through the roof, as, a lot more people are punting, more people are at the tracks, more people are watching. There's just more money around, so I'm really expecting some high quality trading action. But as there's more casual money, there's also a lot more smart money, and the bots were at it again. So it was a tough old day again. A lot of volatility, just like the other days. The only difference being that you can get on for more money. So I thought, okay, here we go again. But this time I was disciplined. Even though it was a Saturday and I usually expect to make above average returns, although I had a figure in my mind, I put no pressure on myself whatsoever to hit it. I just thought I'll let the opportunities come to me. So the first race comes along, and I find a nice angle of attack to enter the market, and I make a few scalps, and I put myself 30 or 40 pound up. And then 5 minutes before the off, the price gets nuked. It goes right through me. I think it was just like a 10k brick of money, just slammed the price in. And I already decided beforehand that £100 is a max I'm willing to lose on any race. If this price moves anywhere near putting me at a 3-figure loss, I'm getting out of there. So the price was approaching my stop loss in my mind. I was around £75 down at the time, and I exited. But by the time the price came in, it was happening so quickly. This guy was just chasing any price to get himself matched. I don't know what his angle was. And by the time I exited, I was around 100 quid down. And the price just got hammered in even further. It ended up bouncing back as the market corrected itself eventually. But it never quite hit my entry point. So it was 100% correct call to get out of that trade. But, I really felt like I did everything right. It was just unlucky timing. I've been scalping for a long time, and there's really no solution to countering when things like that happen unless you have some inside knowledge, which I don't. Anyway, the horse went on to lose. So I said to myself, if I catch this guy again on any other race, I'm gonna keep a beady eye out for it, because had I waited for his money to come in, I could have jumped in front of it and laid it off for really short odds. Easier said than done, but I've seen guys like this operate before, and I do have experience with trading these sort of situations. So next race, again, I find another good angle to enter, and I managed to scalp out 50 quid or so. I managed to lock in 50 quid. But this time I exit my positions a good 15 minutes 10, 15 minutes before the off. I wasn't in the mood for another roller coaster. And for the next 15 minutes, usually when the prices are the most volatile pre-race, in the last 5-10 minutes, the price action was relatively quiet. Nothing really happened. So I thought, okay, back to normal then. But until the final minute, it happened again. A good few bricks of money started arriving on the backside, and I managed to time it perfectly. I jumped in front of it, and lo and behold, it was him. The price got slammed in again for a good 7 to 8 ticks. Now, bear in mind, these were odds north of 10 to 1, where the tick increments carry higher value. And I had my exit perfectly timed, and I managed to lock in £300 profit. Then, as soon as the backside money dried up, I laid it and chased the price back up for another 100, and I closed my position for over £400 profit pre-race. So, not only was that my best pre-race trade of the tournament, but that's probably my best result in about 2 years. I think the last time I had a result that good was during the Melbourne Cup. And my best pre-race trade ever was during my very first Grand National. And it actually traded pretty similar to this one, except I made over £800 profit off of that. But this was just an absolute Hail Mary of a trade. I was so excited. I tried to pull one of those off during Cheltenham. Cheltenham is the number one event in terms of liquidity pre-race. That's the best festival to trade pre-race, but I just couldn't get that, that big trade. I had a very good Cheltenham, by the way, but it was very consistent. But this Hail Mary of a trade, this £400 pre-race trade, it really took the pressure off for the rest of the afternoon. And like I've said several times now, it was a tough week and a tough Saturday, and I ended up trading the next 5 races for around even. So I barely made £300 on the final day, but at least I had something to rave about. So yeah, 300 quid. It's not spectacular given that that's what I expect to make on a regular Saturday. But when you put it into context, it was a very tough Ascot to trade pre-race, and I was forced onto the back foot and had to trade defensively after that poor session in the middle of the tournament. I didn't want to give away any more money back, and I didn't really have any momentum on my side. So yeah, that was Ascot. Now, I was planning on sacking off Sunday as I was so burnt out, but because I was way off my projected profit for the week, I thought I'll give it one final roll of the dice, as it was the last round of the US Open in the golf, and it was poised for a Grand Slam finish. Now, bear in mind, I was very mindful of the mental state at the time that I was in. I went into Sunday knowing full well that I had no chance of making up for what I was expecting to hit. I think I closed the festival around 400 quid up. So to make another £1,100, given my staking and trading style, it just wasn't possible, especially in the context of the final day of the US Open, since I was expecting, a very tight, finish to the tournament. There was around half dozen people that were in contention. So my plan was to make several small trades, and just take advantage of the back and forth whipsawing in price amongst the leaders and just free roll it when there's a clear winner. So I was expecting to make around 200-300 quid off of it. But long story short, it was a lot harder than I expected, which was pretty much the theme for the whole week. There was a lot of whipsawing in the price action, but the top guys like Scotty Scheffler, Will Zalatoris and Matt Fitzpatrick, they'd make birdies out of nowhere and then they'd make bogeys out of nowhere. So it was highly unpredictable. It was really difficult to catch the tops and the bottoms at any given time, which I'm usually pretty good at when trading golf. So yeah, I made several back delays and later backs across the top players, and I ended up having to lock in around 100 quid profit, and I couldn't afford to free roll it as it went right to the wire. And had it not been for an unbelievable recovery approach shot on the last by Matthew Fitzpatrick, there would have been a playoff. So once again, didn't meet my projected estimate. Things didn't pan out how I expected them to. But If this week has taught me anything, it's better to see your glass half full than half empty, because it could have been a whole lot worse. You see, the old me would have treated that 400-pound losing session in the middle of the week on day 2 as something I'd have to try and recover and make back and work harder and stake bigger. And I might have gotten away with it. I've done so in the past. I've gotten away with doing things like that in the past. But in the long run, you're going to get caught out. And when you do, you're only going to dig yourself a bigger hole to get yourself out of. I've made all the mistakes in the book before. And I've had times when I've doubled down on positions and put larger stakes through the market in order to recoup losses. And if I tally up the amount of times that it's paid off, it's far outweighed by the times it didn't pay off. And that's how it's going to happen. That's how it's going to be in the long run. It's down to the simple fact that, if you stray away from your game plan, you try taking those gambles, they're not going to pay off, in the long run. If you average it out, you might get away with it once or twice, but in the long run, you're going to lose more times than you win. You have to play the long game. If you want to be in the money in the long run, you have to play the long game. And when you do have sessions, bad trading sessions or bad weeks where you fall short of your target, yeah, it's painful, but it's a much harder pill to swallow. Ending what should have been a highly profitable week with a losing week, that would have been, really frustrating. I've never had a losing week at Ascot, but it easily could have happened, had I let it. And that would have just been inexcusable. Nowadays, whenever I have a bad session, I just do my best to note down and analyze what was going through my mind at the time. And, having reflected upon that day now, it's been a good, 4 days now since the tournament finished. And, having reflected upon it, it all stemmed from my big expectations of the week. I was already on a high coming off the cricket. I did really well on the opening day of the festival. And I just got carried away. I got carried away with my expectations. It's really as simple as that. There's no overcomplicating it. I strayed from my plan. I overstaked when I shouldn't have, and I got punished for it. Now, there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. Confidence is when you're on a good run. You can afford to, be a little bit more free with your risk taking. You can take on a little bit more risk, but you still have to have situational awareness. I was arrogant this week. The last few weeks have been a bit flat. I've fallen a little bit short of my average. And this week I had a really good start. Last week I had a really good start to the week on the cricket, and I tried to just hit a home run. And I grew impatient. I didn't take into account what was going on around me. And I ended up losing money on what should have been a profitable day. And when you have a bad losing day like that, it's not something you can just bounce back from. That's something I've learned with time. Often when you get stung with a bigger than average loss, you can't just nosedive back in and start swinging for the fences and trading like everything's normal. You have to get defensive. You got to ease your way back in and build momentum, because often when you go through periods where you trade well, it's because you've got momentum on your side. So yeah, that's kind of how I approached the rest of the festival after day 2. I wasn't there to make up for the average or try and hit my projections. I was there just to, limit the damage and then build from there, which I did to the best of my ability. So yeah, it was just the simple fact that, clinging on to my expectations is what hurt me, for the week. Sorry, not for the week, but for that day, at least. When you expect things, you start seeing things that aren't there, and then you start placing trades you shouldn't be making because, you're too vested in hitting an imaginary target. The markets don't work like that. You have to play the long game. This is a game that rewards patience. You have to let the opportunities come to you. You have to wait for the trades, to fall in your lap, so to speak. And your job is to just be ready and be alert for when it does come, and then just hit it with a hammer. That's why you can't have expectations. Sometimes things aren't going to go your way, and all you got to do is just sit on your hands. You have to have that discipline to know when to sit on the fence and not do anything. Sometimes you'll go days, weeks, or even months of flat periods, and then you'll have a week or, a few days, you'll just have a patch where you more than make up for it. So yeah, even though it was a below average Ascot, there's probably going to be festivals or weekends or cricket matches in the future where I'm going to make well above average. So it all evens out. Like I said, you just have to keep remembering the bigger picture here. But yeah, with regards to the festival again, like I said before, the old me would have gone and tried to chase back those losses. But, I'm experienced now. And the only worst thing than making a mistake is not learning from it. Pain is supposed to be your greatest instructor. And, after that day two at the festival, I've been there before. These are clothes I've worn before. I've been in situations where I've had high expectations and I've blown up. But this time I knew what to do. I stayed patient. I took my foot off the gas. I recouped and made back what I could. So going forward, I'm going to make a conscious effort towards clearly defining that separation between projection and expectation. It's perfectly okay. It's sensible, in fact, to make projections as to what you could make based on your trading style, based on your staking, based on what you've made historically. But it's absolutely nonsensical to expect anything from the market. The markets are incredibly dynamic. There's so many variables at play that you're not always privy to. And it's never easy trading, and it never gets easier. All you can do is just make sure that you're better equipped the next time you face an unfavorable situation. You're always going to make mistakes. So you have to draw upon your experience that you've learned from. But yeah, that's my week in review. Going forward, there's plenty of good action. So yeah, I'm still optimistic for June. Very optimistic for July, August. So yeah, just going to knuckle down now. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Next week, I'm going to try and upload another video of the Day in the Life series where I vlogged my travels at the end of last month. So, right now I'm really juggling between trading, which is pretty full on, and editing at the minute. So, bear with me. It's going to be up. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And if you're not listening, if you are listening and you're not subscribed, what on earth are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, like, share, tell everyone about the channel, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers.